It's interesting because when I started this right before COVID started, there really was not talk about this. And since I launched in October, the scene has really blown up.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm interviewing Dr. Brooke Jeffy. She is a board-certified dermatologist who works in Scottsdale, Arizona. She has her own private practice. And today, we're going to be talking about how she launched her own skincare line, how she did it, and how it is different from what is already out there. Thanks, Dr. Jeffy, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me how far you are into your private practice, because being a private practice doctor in and of itself is being an entrepreneur. So how many years have you been doing this, and what was your inspiration to start a private practice?
Yeah, so I started my private practice in July of last year, so it's still very new. It came about because the practice I was employed by, they sold to private equity, and kind of the typical changes that were not great for me started to happen. And that is when I decided it was time to go out on my own. Just in this area, most of the practices are private equity. And so that was really my only other choice, was to kind of just do my own thing. So you're right. That is certainly being an entrepreneur, getting your own practice up and running. And insanely, I'm doing that along with the skincare line.
Yeah, that is quite a lot on your plate. So tell me about the skincare line and when the idea for it first came about.
Yeah, so unlike the private practice that I started, which sort of happened pretty quickly, the skincare line was really something that evolved very slowly over time. So, in the back of kind of my practice and sort of what I enjoy doing has been really focused on acne. So, over the past 5 years or so, really more and more interested in helping patients with acne. I just find it to be super rewarding. I mean, there's so many caveats that kind of go into it, and things that even in our lifestyle are playing a role, like diet and sleep, and then skincare, how that plays a role, and then add in the medications, and then the mental health aspects. And so I just found that super rewarding. So I kind of had that love in the back of my head for that condition. And then, after I'd been in practice, which I think happens to a lot of us, around the 8 to 10 year mark, I kind of felt like I was sort of on the top of my game, and I maybe wanted to do something more, learn something else, try out, develop some new skills. And so I sort of had that brewing. I put myself out there to work with other skincare brands to kind of help them with content, as well as, formulation questions, things like that. And then I also got a little bit involved in telemedicine. That was kind of around the time that was, particularly with COVID, getting very, really taking off. And one of the so those two experiences, really working with different skincare lines, really made me interested. And I saw this white space available in the younger patients I was working with, because they would come to me and not be sure what they should be doing, even how to basically take care of their skin. And then their parents were not sure what products they should use, for example. So one of the experiences that I had was working for a teledermatology startup. And the two founders their backgrounds were in skincare. One of them was branding, with skincare branding and formulation. And then the other one was with social media and marketing. So I worked with them just for their company as a dermatologist, but I got to know them. Ultimately, their company did not succeed, but I had them as a contact. And so I ran this idea by them. This was right before or right after COVID happened, really, that I thought, okay, maybe this is a good time to do this. And now I have some people that I at least have an initial contact set with that could help me on this journey. So that was really a huge thing for me, is just learning how to even navigate where to start asking for help. Definitely something that was out of my comfort zone. In the past, I never had to do that for, just going to work as an employed dermatologist.
Okay. So you mentioned that you found a white space. What was that white space and how did you really identify it? Was it an aha moment or were you just noticing trends and patterns in the patients you were seeing?
Yeah, it was kind of a trend that I had been noticing, but there really kind of was one day, it was just like this aha moment. Like I'm telling all of these younger kids and their parents when they're asking about just certain products, okay, certain major brands that a lot of dermatologists like to recommend. But I think a lot of this has to do with social media kind of becoming more popular at the time too. None of it felt like really specific to them. And they wanted that. And it's interesting because when I started this about right before COVID started, there really was not talk about this. And since I launched in October, the scene has really blown up. I mean, a little bit before then, but it's a huge area of conversation now, and many brands, smaller indie brands coming forth to kind of work in this white space, but it's obviously still an area of need that's evolving.
And what is the specific demographic that the brand does target?
Yeah, so my line is really targeting tweens and younger teens. So, I mean, the product can be used by anyone. We say like 6 is probably the earliest, but it's really targeted for 9 years and up. I don't think it's as appealing to older teens. So, once you get past like 17, 18, maybe it's just not quite as appealing to them in terms of the marketing. But really the point was to go after those tweens, because in addition to giving them skincare that felt like it was for them, one of my biggest passions is educating them on the importance of taking care of their skin and what that looks like. And so I wanted to start that young. And really, when I started the brand, I kind of almost considered it just being an educational, like getting the word out with how to take care of your skin type of thing. But then, like I said, I had these contacts and it sort of just evolved that I had the opportunity to develop a line that would fit them.
So you had mentioned the contacts. Were they still working on their skincare brand when you approached them about what you wanted to do? I'm interested to know the dynamic of how that kind of went down.
Yeah, so the two main contacts that I had that really helped expand my network, they were not actually anymore working specifically like as employees of different brands. They had that experience in their background, but they'd kind of moved on to have like their own consulting type of companies really in the space. So just they had a lot of great experience and contacts, but they were both incredibly supportive of helping me bring this vision forward.
So they were actually running their own company at the same time. So they didn't see it as competitive or it didn't bother them, or did they see this as a completely separate kind of area of derm?
Yeah, well, actually, the company they were running at that time that they employed me as a dermatologist to offer telehealth services for, it was just a telederm practice, basically. They just had this background, both of their backgrounds were in beauty and in health, and they decided to try this telehealth company. And really their initial vision had to evolve a lot, and that's probably why it was not successful, just because they launched right around the time of COVID, and so it was a little bit chaotic there. But no, they were not actually, I was not competing with them in any way.
So you already know these two, you tell them your idea, they're ready and willing to support you. What was that first step that you took to going down this path? And what was your initial capital investment to actually go down the path?
Yeah, so started out with branding and trying to find the voice for the brand. And that took about 6 to 8 months of kind of going back and forth with things. Developing how we wanted the website to look, the messaging. So that was where I started. And then once we got a bit further into that, I worked with a chemist to actually formulate these products. They are not just white labeled products. I did, work directly with a chemist. And then it was finding manufacturing, going through stability. It's, a really long, lengthy process. But the capital involved is, at this point, I have about $100,000 invested in the company right now. I'm just self-funding as of now. That's a conversation that I am struggling, or an aspect that I'm struggling with in terms of trying to scale now that we've launched. But we started this initial launch small, just to get some feedback, get some systems in place, and then I'll have to think about those changes for scale moving forward.
Well, that's not an insignificant investment. So I can imagine that can be a little bit stressful. So do you think that the majority of that was put into the chemist portion of that, or?
Shockingly, no. The chemist fee is one of the smaller fees here. More the money has gone into branding. Initially was the huge expense, and then now it's the social media aspect of it. So that's also been a really interesting learning experience, is how marketing works and the social media age that we live in, and then trying to tease out myself and my practice and the brand and getting all that out there. It's been a little bit complicated, but the huge cost now is really the marketing part, the public relations, and obviously the product cost of production and such. But really the largest part is marketing.
How did you come up with your unique formulation? So what were you looking at in the market that already was there? What did you, I'm not asking you about anything proprietary, but sort of what was your thought process in terms of getting things formulated?
Yeah, I really just wanted a product that was fragrance free, free of, I don't know if you're familiar with the Credo brand. They're kind of a clean beauty brand that focuses on information about clean beauty. Clean is kind of this nebulous term out there, but they put forth some guidelines, and so I wanted to stick with those. So those are things like avoiding certain preservatives, avoiding certain things that can be potential hormone disruptors, really just to make parents feel comfortable about it. Of course, we did also go through patch testing and development to be sure that we didn't see any problems with irritation. But in terms of actual ingredients, what I wanted in there were things that were antioxidants. Okay, because I do think that is important in young kids with their skincare. But I also wanted it to be very gentle and hydrating so that we could really support their skin barrier. So antioxidants to help kind of reduce the stress that the skin comes into contact with, a gentle exfoliant, just incredibly mild exfoliant, just to get the turnover happening a little bit so we don't get those clogged pores. But I wanted it to be gentle for tweens to be able to use and start that routine with.
So with all the testing that you're doing, the patch testing and making sure that these formulations are free of certain things, do you have to then sort of have a third party verify those things? What is the process of actually being able to advertise that this product is free of all these things?
Yes, well, you obviously have to have a trusted kind of chemist, and essentially what happens is they do stability testing as they're like, once we decide on a formula, I was okay with how it felt, liked the formula. It goes through a series of testing for stability to be sure that things are not growing in it, for example. And then we find a manufacturer, and they then have to make the product on their equipment. And then it has to undergo stability testing after they've made their product at a level that they can scale, right? So the testing in terms of being sure that that heat, for example, doesn't affect them is done twice, really. The patch testing is something that is done by a third-party company. So you pay them. I believe our series had 50 people that are exposed to the product and determine if there's any local reactions on the skin.
So I would not even know where to start. And I'm assuming you were probably the same way when you started this journey. So how did you even know that patch testing is something you needed to do? How did you even know that, you needed to test for heat stability? Because I mean, when you're saying it, it makes sense,
Right.
obviously. But I don't know if I'd
Yeah.
be like, oh, let's test for this and test for that. So who was telling you all this information?
Yeah, well, I mean, as a derm, I mean, one thing that I felt strongly about was that yes, I wanted it to be patch tested, but I didn't really know what that meant on like a scale with, a line. But when I was working with the woman who was helping me do my branding, she had worked with companies like this before, who had developed skincare, different lines in the beauty space. So she would told me, okay, you have to do this, or there's this testing that's an option. But along the way, like the chemist, it's like a non-negotiable. They have to do their stability testing. And then once you get to manufacturing, it's a non-negotiable. They don't let you skip that part. Like you have to do it. But yes, I had a trusted source, who sort of became a friend just because we had a history before, that had all these resources and this knowledge. Because yeah, I had no idea. I mean, I had no idea that a lot of products out there, they're just white labeled. So I mean, that was one thing that even we talked about for me. But for me, it was more than just branding it and marketing it to tweens. I wanted it to actually be good for their skin. But there are so many products that are just, you just put a label on it and you just buy it off the shelf. And I've learned a tremendous amount.
So now that you are marketing the product, and obviously you're marketing to people that are ages 9 to 10 to 17, it's a very different space than marketing to someone who's my age or older. So are you primarily using TikTok, or what have you found to be the best strategies for marketing to that demographic?
Yeah, so it's definitely a challenge because the consumer that we're going after is the younger person who, let's face it, doesn't have any money.
Mhm.
It's their parent really that is going to have to buy the product for them. Obviously, they may have some say in it, but what, and I honestly don't 100% know the answer at this point. I mean, what our focus has been on is Instagram, going after really kind of moms with kids in this age group. Felt like that's kind of where these moms hang out primarily. So that's been our focus. We do also post all of our content on TikTok, but I have not put any money, honestly, in TikTok at this point. All the money spent has gone into Instagram. But that is definitely an area, TikTok, where, after the first of the year, we're thinking about trying to get more eyes, on the actual kids that are buying this. But there's other marketing that we're focusing a little bit on too, which is like sponsorships for schools, athletics, the schools, to see if we can kind of be a little more known in that space as well, because that gets us in front of them, but also does something good.
That is a great idea. You are giving me lots of ideas for some of my own brands that I'm thinking about. But yeah, of course, because teenagers got to go to college and they need money. And what a great way to get in front of them. So are you doing like scholarships, or how does it?
Well, not quite there yet. But right now we're just kind of starting with donation based type of sponsorships, for sports or schools. Sure, I mean, a scholarship would be amazing at some point in the future, or even to just get kids maybe an extracurricular activity that they couldn't do before, something on a smaller scale, maybe not necessarily an educational scholarship. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. It's just, teasing that all out.
Yeah, no, for sure. I remember I got a scholarship, and it wasn't a huge amount. I think it was like $500, which at the time when you're in high school is a lot of money. But it
Yeah.
was from like my local grocery store, and I got another, $1,000 from Coca-Cola. And those brands are burned in my head, not to mention that, well, Coca-Cola is different because Coca-Cola is like a huge brand, but the Big Y grocery store, which I have not shopped at in 30 years is still burned in my brain because they gave me $500 so I could, go to college. And so that's a really interesting way to market to that demographic. And I'm curious to see sort of how that works out for you. So you obviously have your own private practice. Are you selling the products there, or is your private practice more geared towards older people?
Yeah, so I do sell the products through the clinic. And my practice is a little bit unique because I am direct pay. I don't accept insurance. So, and I'm in a situation right now where I can't see Medicare patients. So my age is very skewed younger, which kind of works for me. And it works for the practice that I kind of envision. I mean, again, my love is treating acne and more complicated conditions like hair loss, for example. And so these are things that take time, and it's very challenging in a typical insurance-based dermatology practice where, you have 7 to 10 minutes with somebody to address those conditions well. So it's really kind of like the perfect fit for me, and also the brand, to be in the clinic as well.
Have you thought about raising venture capital, or do you think you want to just keep going the way you are right now?
I've definitely thought about it. It's definitely something I think you have to think about. That seems so overwhelming to me right now. But it's definitely something that I have to continue to consider. For right now, no. But I think there does, if we're growing and expanding like I would love to, there gets to be a point where I think you have to do that.
So before we get to the end of the interview, I want to thank everyone for watching. If you found this interesting, please like and subscribe below. It not only helps the channel, it also helps all of the entrepreneurs and businesses that we feature on it. Thanks for watching. So Dr. Jeffy, can you tell me about the specific products that are in the line?
Yes. So the line is designed to be very simple. That was important to me for getting these tweens in a routine, right? Don't want it to be overwhelming. So it's 2 products. There is a cleanser and a moisturizer. Now, there is not a sunscreen. I hope to bring a sunscreen on in the future, but it's much harder to bring a sunscreen to market. So there are a lot of great sunscreens out there that are appropriate for younger skin. So I definitely have certain brands that I recommend in terms of how that goes. But yes, the line is just a cleanser and a moisturizer. One thing that sometimes people ask me is about the fact that there's not a toner, which a lot of brands focus on a 3-step and include a toner, but toners are really not necessary. You get all ingredients that you need from other products. It's just kind of an extra step that's unnecessary, and I didn't want to burden tweens with that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, because I was a proactive user when I was younger, and I remember just being totally overwhelmed by the fact that not just that I had to use a toner, but I was like, I gotta find a cotton ball. And I know that sounds like such a stupid problem. And I was like, where? And I'd run out of cotton balls, and I'd just be like pouring it on my hands. And I'm like, well, I'm wasting half of it. So I appreciate less is more, especially if you can get it all into the 2 products. What about a spot treatment? Because I know your passion is acne. Is that something that's on the horizon, or something you guys are considering?
Yes, definitely a spot treatment could be an option. There are a couple other things that I'm thinking about in terms of like a gentle acne treatment. Again, this is a line that the idea is to address younger, more sensitive skin, get them on good habits, honestly, hopefully to prevent them from having more significant acne. But of course, that's still possible. But yes, I would like to have maybe a spray, because I think that works well with this age group, or a spot treatment to add to specifically address acne.
This is all really interesting. I would love to do a follow-up in a year and see where you guys are at and what else you guys have innovated on in terms of the skincare line, and how you've been doing on the marketing side, because that's always fascinating for people to hear. Where can people find you and the line if they're interested in buying?
Yes. So obviously, if you're in the Scottsdale area, come see me in the office. But the line can be purchased at Meet Between. It's MEETBTWN.com. And then my practice is my name, BrookeJeffyMD.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.